sehr geehrte Europa.
Good evening, dear members of the European Parliament, dear Mr. Moritz, dear Mr. Baerbock, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend my warm welcome to you all to the Hessian State representation in Brussels for Europe in the run-up to the elections that we are organizing once again together, and I'm really delighted about the feedback that this event gets tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Europe is facing numerous challenges, be it with regards to our security and defense, climate change, migration, or competitivity. All of these points need a common answer, a strong answer on a European level. The European elections offer the opportunity to set the path for the right way. 4.85 million citizens in Hesse have a right to vote, and I have the impression, and I see this tonight, that the people are ever more conscious of the importance of the elections. And that's why we have our hopes up for a high turnout at the election. And this is also a strong signal to the world that people are standing behind their values of democracy and freedom. And now, looking at the state we're currently in, we as the European Union will be fighting for our values, will be fighting for our welfare and freedom, and also will be fighting for our place in the world. And I use this term, fight, very consciously, because there is nothing else that will be facing us instead of this. Because with the new European Parliament, we need a strong majority that gets us to a path of being able to defend ourselves. This is the start of everything. It took far too long to realize how important this question of defense is in many member states, and for decades it was okay to spend money elsewhere because we could rely upon America and NATO, and maybe also because we were convinced that we would have internal peace. But now the world has changed. I just cite Ukraine, but you all know that there are many more hot topics and crises all over the world. In this war we have in Ukraine with the aggressor, it's not just about influence. The Putin system wants to destroy everything that constitutes what we are standing for: our freedom, our openness, our diversity, our tolerance. And ladies and gentlemen, we need deputies that put the focus back on the core areas of the European institutions, and because of a lot of new words and inspiration, we actually got diverted from the most important thing, the single market, because this was what allowed to secure our welfare. And therefore, it should not be the case that we actually need to dare to stand for this, to have the courage to stand, be it for the agriculture, for economy, and also in very many other areas. And less bureaucracy is not a goal in itself. It is to protect our well-being, because in the end our economic potential is what secures our position in the world, and we need to be prepared for a world where Europe maybe will be standing only in the second row, because where we have Russia, Asia, and America, and we need to fight and stand up for ourselves in Europe. And that's why we need deputies that set the path and that protect our interests in the world. We as Democrats, as voices of European integration, we need to get as many votes as possible. That's what the elections are about. We need to have a good cooperation that is directed towards the future. And yes, indeed, in 15 days' time, there will be the elections. There is a lot at stake, and we would like to have a courageous European Parliament full of convinced Democrats. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're attending a European event, you don't need to be convinced of the idea of Europe. But again, I would really like to thank you all, dear MEPs, for your participation here, for our panel, and also thank you to Mr. Moritz for the facilitation of tonight's event. And the closing remarks, thank you, Mr. Frank Hoffmeister, and Mr. Moritz, you have the floor.
Ja, vielen Dank, Frau Staatssekretärin.
Thank you very much, State Minister. My name is Hans-Jürgen Moritz. I've been reporting about the European Union affairs for 15 years now, not only in Brussels, so as of lately more in Berlin, but still I'm looking very closely to Brussels, and this is just to introduce myself if you don't know me, but maybe I'm quite recognizable anyways. So I would also like to welcome you all here, of course, and what we will be doing in the next hour and a half is the elephants around here. It has nothing to do with Botswana and elephants over there. No, it's just that we are talking about the heavyweights of the political world. So we have co-presidents of political parties and even leading candidates from Germany, and I'm really happy about that. So this is a very prominent panel here tonight, and well, I'm really delighted. Also, one more technical aspect I'd like to pass on to you, because this event can be watched online on the live stream, and you could also hand in your question here. It would be streamline at lv-brussels.hessen.de, and you will be seeing representatives of political parties who really were strong enough to be a party in the German parliament, and that's why they were invited, and I would like to invite them to the podium now. Thank you.
So.
Well then. Unfortunately, I've already lost part of my mic, but I don't think it will be an issue. I can even speak up if need be, but I will do it a bit old school tonight. I'll start with the ladies. I think no one will be against it. Katarina Barley, I think she's well known. She is the leading candidate of the SPD in Germany. Then Terry Reintke to my right. Also the leading candidate of the European Green Party, and together with Bas Eickhout, so the two leading candidates. And also you're the co-president of the political party in the parliament. Yes, indeed. So then we have Daniel Caspary. He is leading the CDU-CSU together with Grünen. Then we have Moritz Körner. He is leading the FDP deputies in the European Parliament. Maximilian Krah, leading candidate for the AfD for the European election. And Mr. Schirdewan, a lot of functions that he occupies. He is also the president of his party, the Linke, and also the co-president of the political party in the parliament. So they were so kind as to join us here tonight, immediately stepping over from the European Parliament, where they spent the entire day, all 6 of them. So today, migration policy, but you were voting about the new directives, no? So, but we would like to talk about asylum and migration. I guess it's quite a hot topic for you. So what's your position on what has been happening? So it has been passed. I personally do not know what the votes were or what percentages were allowed to each party, allocated to each party, and Of course, this asylum and migrational policy that has been discussed for years now will maybe be the cause of a different treatment of this topic during the running up to the elections, maybe? Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting us and for organizing all of this. And also, I would like to welcome my colleagues because this was quite a hard day today. There were a lot of questions in there, so I would like to unravel them a bit. So, the migrational policy is, of course, something that is comes with a lot of emotions because we're talking about people dying in thousands, and this is an area of policy that has not been working for years now. I always said that this is really the black spot here for the European Union, because for years the European Union has tried to replace the rules that were not working. That it took so long is not due to us, but rather due to the Council, but still it took that long. I don't think anyone sitting here would be saying that the way we have voted now is really the best possible issues we could have. Maybe someone else would disagree, but we have a package of different legislations that had different majorities, and for the most controversial part, we just had a majority of 30 votes, more than the other party. So my personal evaluation of the situation is that we still need new rules, because the way we're acting right now is just not working out, because we see people drowning in the Mediterranean Sea every month, and we see the refugee camp of Moria, where people are just standing in a mess. You cannot imagine the circumstances people are living in, and we just cannot go on like this. And of course, if I could do everything myself, I wouldn't do this exactly like this. And my colleagues and myself at some point really had to turn a blind eye to certain aspects. But without that, we would have lost everything. So we have negotiated for 8 years. We have a system that is not working at all, and if we don't get to a new system, then of course everything we would have feared would have become a reality. Everything would have been about this subject and only this subject, because the people would have said, well, the European Union just doesn't manage. So, well, that would have been the headline, that we just don't get there. And it would have been used as ammunition during the running up to the election, and it would have been used as a tool by different parties. Of course, they would have done so anyway, no matter the result of our vote today. But we also won't be able I'll say, okay, that's the way it is now, because it will only be valid as of 2026, but at least we're able to act. We have a new legal framework that we have created, and at some points it can be criticized for sure, but we will get improvements with this new framework, and we now need to make sure that the member states will be implementing this as well, so that we will have a functioning legal framework. Mrs. Reintke, same subject. In your program, I can maybe read it out, but the gist is that we needed to move Europe forward, that we need to be able to make compromises, that you need to take on responsibility, that it's not always easy. Was that just such a decision for you today, where you sometimes needed to turn a blind eye to certain aspects to make sure that we don't end up with nothing at all? And so we will do this very hard step.
In our program, we say that we have to make compromises, but it doesn't say you always have to choose the compromise, because there is always still conditions and questions. And at the end, I choose for the best options. So it can be the status quo or not. Now we balanced the different options, and Katarina just explained it. We had different positions. We voted for some things, against some other things. And I do agree we do need a reform of the European asylum system. There's many weaknesses, but at the same time, every change doesn't mean that it gets better. And with this concrete package, I would just like to say a couple of points where I think that it's not clear if really it's going to make the situation better or if it might even worsen it. It's first of all the humanitarian situation of people seeking protection in Europe. Katarina Barley mentioned Moria as an example. With this reform, if the objective is that children can also be stuck in camps outside of the European Union, then I am afraid that it might lead to even more Morias because we don't have the right procedures. We would actually need other steps. We want more clarity. We want procedures for those who stay, those cannot stay, but just having these camps outside of the EU and outsource this, well, we have some worries that this might not work. And apart from this humanitarian aspect, there is another aspect I want to mention. We talked about this crisis regulation as well. An important point is about this migration asylum policy to make it more clear and more more constructed, because now the problem is also the implementation. There is already many laws. There is the law that you cannot have pushbacks, but it is not respected. But the European Commission doesn't do anything about it. There is no infringement procedures, for example, against the concerned member states. So what I say is we need a system that works, which also makes controls at outside borders possible, but which also is really implemented. Because I can have the best law, but if it's not really put through, then it doesn't help those who are looking and seeking for protection, this protection that they need. And in this sense, I think that this pact for migration and asylum might not reach what it is supposed to reach. Like, for example, this protection, because protection is a very high good. That also is very important due to history of the European Union. And I also don't think that this pact with this crisis regulation will lead to the fact that we will get this humanity, this human aspect at the border. So I think there we have to work further, because we need a resilient system in the end, because I think this is what is the wish, but I don't think that there will be less refugees in future. So we really need a system that is legally certain, that also provides the necessary protection, which also protects our borders at the same time, and which is really sustainable on the long term and really works on the long term. And when there is a compromise that is found, well, you also have to say that this has not been achieved in some aspects. Well, thank you, Mr. Caspary. I assume that you have a bit of a different view on it. There is the implementation. You want to achieve this with 30,000 Frontex people working for Frontex, for example. But now, first of all, in summer there will be even more refugees. So how do you see that this promise can really be put in practice? Well, first of all, as a union, we want these Frontex soldiers. We want to protect our borders better. In 2015-16, we had member states like Greece that didn't want to protect the outside border. It's not only that they didn't want, but they also were not able to, even if they had wanted to. And our outside border is at the same time the border of Germany, for example, if it's the EU's external border. That's why we need Frontex. And I'm happy that we found a majority in the parliament for this very important step in this direction. I think it would have been a catastrophe if it had stayed the way it is. But it only goes in the right direction, because at the end we need a clear and unified asylum system with clear rules and that make sure that only those people come to us that really need our help, because at the moment it's not those people that need our help the most that comes, it's those that are able to pay the smugglers and who is strong enough to cross the Mediterranean and come to us. So this is unfair, first of all, and it doesn't lead to the objective. So it was an important step, but we also want to continue in this direction. Of course, in a humanitarian way, but also in a fair way. And this is what we have to do as the EU, to be fair to people. Mr. Krah, you have this Fortress Europe in your election program. I assume for you it doesn't go far enough. No, indeed, it's not enough. Migration is the first topic for people voting in Germany, according to the polls, and we just heard it, that in the last years some things didn't go right, that this system doesn't work as it should, and what was decided today will not stop this very high number of people coming to Europe. It will not put an end to it. It's more of a cosmetic decision. So we have to really make sure that something is done before people come, or at least at the border, so that nobody comes in who has not been checked previously. So that's why the rules have to be stricter and more unified. Because now we have many people coming to the EU, and we know that people are not brought back to their countries. So if somebody lets somebody in and has many procedures in place, in the end, it's not really working. The recognition quote in Germany is 8%, but in the end, more than 90% stay in the country. So as you see, this pushback doesn't work. Deporting doesn't work. So and it will. So the number of those people who want to come and who are let in will not go down significantly with today's discussion, because the refugee streams will increase, so the problem is still unsolved. And for the people in Germany for whom it is important, well, of course, we will still talk a lot about this topic in our election. So you are not only very far from Mr. Krah on the podium, but also in terms of the content, but also in terms of the election program. You say you are the only force in the European Parliament that is really against this implementation of the asylum laws in Europe. Well, I thank you for this question. I wonder how it is if you have to ask for asylum in the country that is pursuing you. So to those people who are actually doing it. But yeah, otherwise you're right. We have to take into account this current situation. I had a visitors group, for example, from my district this morning in the European Parliament. And if you have people who work who live in the city or in the town, and there is, the refugees, then they see also how difficult it is to integrate people in the society, in the schools, to provide for the necessary health care and the necessary housing. So indeed, it's just the system is just overloaded, and in practice, the municipalities have not had enough help to really in practice deal with this. It's if you try to integrate 3 or 5 people in school and also have social security for them, well, it's not only that, it's just that our education system is already underfinanced and it's not prepared for these things. So that's why you have to make sure that you don't have minorities that are used against the people that live there, And this discourse has changed so much in Germany that the refugees are seen as a threat, as a danger. But we have also the skills shortage in Germany. We need 400,000 skilled workers every year, and we saw this this morning with these visitor groups that actually we are not using the potential of this immigration. And in these debates we had and in the vote, well, I really think it is in the end a black day for the European Union. Because what we have learned from the Second World War, because we are Germans here discussing with each other, I think these lessons have not been taken into account at all, because at the time artists, intellectuals had to flee, trade unions, etc. Trade unionists, the doors were closed for them, and from there we had this asylum. We had this asylum law that has been decided on in the time, and now it's really unfortunate that we accept such a system which hurts human rights. And of course we will also talk about this topic in our electoral campaign, but and indeed we have to make something about this massive violation of human rights. So Mr. Körner, what about today's decision? What can still be considered as a liberal asylum policy? Well, I think we just saw it. One side wants the Fortress Europe, and maybe immigrate Germans even, and the others say everything that is done goes against human rights. And in this sense, I feel like I'm right in the middle, and I think it's good that we have voted for this compromise because we need some kind of order. You can take these pushbacks out if you want, Terry, but in the end, it's true that everything that we had talked about and decided in the Dublin system is not respected, enforced anymore. So you cannot just have one member state from where somebody else, some refugee just goes to another member state. So anyway, this has to be organized, and that's we also need this distribution mechanism that we decided upon today. And also, I don't know with which visitor groups you are talking with, but in every visitor group that I have, or in the discussions that I have with citizens, they always tell me, please do find a solution to this problem. We are not right radical. We want to stay an open country, and everyone who acts well and has work also is very welcome. But and of course we also have the question of distribution. It has to be fair distribution in Europe, and of course maybe the step we took today it's good, but maybe it's not enough. And of course that's also what we have in Europe. We always have to find a compromise. But we as Democrats in Europe, at least they will not tell us that we didn't do anything enough. Because if you now say it's a black day for Europe, I think in a democratic parliament with free MEPs that vote, and then you have people who get up and demonstrate and protest, and the Greens, etc., went up and stood up and criticized the thing. That's what I was ashamed for. We know each other through the our political work, and the visitor groups that come from my district. They are okay. They come from my district, and we are also confronted with people. Maybe they're a bit more differentiated when they talk to me than when they talk to you. I don't know, but I don't think about this Black Day for Europe. I do think it was a black day. And I think it is dangerous that if you have human rights organizations they all say it doesn't work like this, and then people protest, and then they also protested in front of the parliament, not only inside, but that then in the end they vote for a policy that makes the asylum policy unfunctional, and then tell the others that they are helping right-wing parties. But then I don't understand it, because in the end they help the right-wing parties because they criticize that others implement right-wing policies. Well, maybe let's get back to these other topics, because there were a few points where we have to say, well, it's just not true.
Bei den Namibiern.
Let me just start with the people from Namibia. Of course, the AFD needs to say, oh God, what a bad thing that is. It's just no, Nigeria, no, sorry. Oh, they atrocious, and what we've decided is just a catastrophe. This is, of course, part of what they're saying running up to the election, but that's exactly the question that will be discussed. So, because here we have two ways of applying for an asylum: for those where there's a high probability of being granted the asylum, and for those where there's a low probability. And of course, this is according to their land of origin. So if I'm from Syria, I have a high probability that I'm indeed in danger in some way, and that I'm being followed, but if I come from another country, let's just say Nigeria. In the morning we had Namibia, that's why I mentioned it before, but never mind, where just based on the state there is a kind of political pursuit, but an individual person can still be in danger. For example, homosexual people are really in danger. There is a life threat here, and well, for other people there's just based on the country a high probability, and then we just have the usual procedure. And for the others we say, well, you probably won't be granted asylum right, but still you have the individual right, and that's what we will be checking, but we will be doing more quickly, because you need to provide something on an individual level why indeed you would have the right to that, and that's exactly what's happening for those coming from those countries and not being able to give us an individual reason for their danger. They won't be granted the asylum right. So then skilled labor. Well, we need skilled labor, a lot of it, but one of the serious problems we currently facing is that the legal possibilities were really bad. And of course, if we were in their place, we would also try to get into a better situation, and they try the asylum, maybe they will get it. And of course, I can't speak for the entirety of the European Union, because there's still national states, but in Germany at least there's been a massive reform for legal migration, one of the most progressive ones in the world, because the example we were following was Canada. So we're doing that, but on the other hand, we need to tell people, of course, we need you, and you do have a real chance if we can do all of that together. So we cannot just talk about the asylum part. We also need to talk about labor migration, because if we take all of this together, then we get to a reasonable system. And I would also like to invite others that did not spontaneously take the floor to speak up. So, of course, I've already heard my neighbors muttering something. So maybe we will give you the floor. Well, I've been listening to my colleagues. The question of having two different speeds is okay, that's quite correct, but the question is, how big is the part of the countries that are still stuck with the normal procedure? Because it will be quite enormous. There will be only a few countries that will have the faster process or procedure. But with the slow procedure that we're currently seeing within the European Union, where indeed there are very little people that will be deported even if they get a negative result. So still we will have a lot of people, even more people coming in, and especially for the relevant countries where you see a lot of migration right now, we will end up in the normal procedure. That's the reality. That's what we have to base ourselves on. Then in the total numbers we won't see hardly any changes, and I really think it's remarkable how much you care about the people coming in, getting health care, getting education, but you could also think about the people and the that are already part of the school system and the health system, and what impression they get. For example, your colleague Mrs. Faeser has been has created an asylum policy for the applicants, and now Mrs. Wagenknecht is making sure that you do not get to the necessary percentage you need to be a parliamentary group. So of course they are working for those people who are living in the country that actually create this overload for the schools, for the social system, so and housing. So so that's their way of approaching this, so of course the love for the asylum applicants, well, I really appreciate that, but we need to think about the other people as well. So it's about life and death. So maybe we will get back to the core of our discussion, because the asylum and migration policy and the package that the Commission originally had proposed had a little to do with criminal aspect. Mr. Caspary, thank you very much. So we see again what it's all about in the end. The subject of migration is an issue. I think we all agree on that, if we do not steer this into the right direction. But we also see that migration is used as a weapon. For example, we have AfD employees being sent back with 9,000, but also when we look at Belarus and the borders over there, and of course there is, for example, a working site, and there is just this porta potty, and with the AfD, it's just the same, actually.
Wir müssen da erstmal Herrn Krah darauf reagieren lassen.
So maybe Mr. Krah should be allowed to react to this. So, of course, if you want to treat migration with such discussions here, well, I wish you a lot of luck, but really good luck to you. But if you really handle the asylum issue on this level, this is just qualifying for yourself, so I can laugh about all of that. So we had the facts, alternative facts. Ms. Reintke, maybe first. I'd like to mention 2 points. So if talking about the health system, of course, there is not enough financing, but there's also another aspect I'd like to mention. This health system that we enjoy in Germany won't be continued in such a way for the next 10-20 years. If we looking at the aging population, look into the companies and the healthcare system, ThyssenKrupp, of course they have the Greens here. They want to present it as a huge challenge. So of course they want to reduce CO2. So they need the money, so the dough, not the, yeah. So they need hydrogen and they need the money and everything. So please do not misunderstand me. But here, that was the point they mentioned. Even in the Ruhr area, where we have a lot of youth employment in parts, they see we need people to work, not just skilled people, but just workers, and just saying we're gonna close down the borders and everything will be turned out just fine. This is just besides reality, not just for people who need care, who need to be cared for, but also for those people who would like to have a good economy, who would like to have prosperity in Europe. So, and that's why we need systems that allow for migration, and that's why we also need to concentrate not only on asylum, but also on a European migration law as a whole. And it's a good thing the way we do it in Germany. I agree with you, Katrin. But again, here we need a European solution. We need to simplify legal migration for workers because we will need them in the next years if we want to maintain our prosperity. Another point, if I may. So it's really, really, really difficult if we come back to this situation ever again. So of course we can talk about the camps and who can be held up also for kids. And so of course this is really touching also for me personally. But of course, I don't think it's realistic to say that people won't die anymore if we have a stronger asylum right here. So we need to save those people. We need humanitarian. So of course, no one wants the tractors and the smugglers to get people into Europe. I said, I think there will be more people who will try to get in some way or form. So I don't think that a stronger legislation will lead to less dying. I think that indeed there will be even more people dying. I don't know what we're really talking about. I have the impression that we're really not talking with each other, that there's a lot of misunderstanding in the end. And also, Mrs. Barley, maybe if you would like to add something, that is not possible to solve this entirely. I am really all for fact-checking. So, because this is really annoying. So it is really hard work to be an MEP, and I'm really annoyed if people don't read stuff or just don't take things seriously or don't take people seriously. So the question of the quota of people who are granted asylum or what country and what regime, this is not arbitrary. It's really depending on the quota of people who are granted asylum. And for most countries, we have a lot less than 20%. And this won't change because, unfortunately, we have too many people, too many countries where you have civil wars going on. And whatnot. Unfortunately, we have political persecution, and then they need to find a way to Europe. So in the end, we have not a lot of people coming from South America, for example. So this is just utter nonsense what's been said. So, and in the end, someone needs to say it. Maybe my colleagues didn't dare to. You cannot just leave an argument like the criminal statistics of the police force is just like that. So if you look at the statistics, it's not a criminal. It's just a report about the police work. It's not about the criminal actions happening in the country. It's just what the police does in a given country. So we have an increase of the asylum requests, also an increase of the migration, because it was the first year after the pandemic that we had actually records for, and we had an increase of the population as a whole and of the statistics, because I was once living next to such and here we have more or less the same quota of bad people as in the general population also in Germany. So of course it is guys mostly, but still you have to look. But yes, we have more men in these centers, refugee centers. Well, of course, you have the percentage accordingly. So we have some criminal acts that can only be done by foreigners, and then there's a correlation between criminality and other aspects of your life, social problems. Also, if you're really in a restrained space in your apartment, for example, and also people who have a foreign aspect are more at risk of being prosecuted when compared to people who look German. Of course, we have people here who deal a little bit with Europe, and they would maybe wish for more differentiation, and that's why I would like to say it. we do not want to spend the entire evening talking about this. But as I was just being attacked, I would like to mention what Mrs. Faeser said. The correlation is right, that more migration led to more criminal acts. That's what I said before. If you have more people coming, of course you have more. But maybe we would just like to talk about another subject. So it's just, I really need to stop you here. But Mr. Caspary, you made an excellent bridge. So you said migration as a weapon. It's the right subject, because in your campaigns is Russia that is leading this war of aggression cannot be a partner. But Russia won't disappear from the map, and also Putin probably won't retire anytime soon. So what about the time after the war? So again, this is the first challenge. So what I'm worried about is that we're talking about the time after the war, and we're talking too much about it. But the country of Ukraine is still in the midst of it, and they can still lose. And imagine there's a war, no one goes, well, war comes to you. And that's exactly the risk that we will face. And we need more foreign security policy for the European Union. We need to be together. So we would like to strengthen massively the defense policy, and also when it comes to weapons and so on. If we needed to spend more for our defense, well, of course, most of the added value should be created within the European Union if we create our armor over here. But I fear that we just let Ukraine stand alone. They need more weapons. They need them faster. And as a whole, I think that we're too passive in the European Union. We need to be able to be in a position that Putin just doesn't dare to attack us, because if you don't want war, you need to prepare for war, and that's exactly what was done 2 years ago. We saw the pictures on the satellite imaging, and still the people denied it and just didn't want to see it. And you also see how many friends he has within the European Union, and if we see that, well, this is grounds for worrying, and I'm really worrying a lot. We needed to contribute, and we had a lot of suggestions by the former Minister of Defense, Mrs. von der Leyen, when she was still in that position. So we need to realize what's going on, and I would really urge you to make the next step. And we have until the 9th of June to actually make it happen. Mrs. Reintke, I guess that big parts of your party would highlight what Mr. Caspary just said, but it's quite surprising because quite some time ago it was more about protesting the war, but now there has been a radical change, and now you need to convince the partners in government to do actually just that. Well, sometimes it feels that way, but maybe I'd like to add another dimension. Indeed, we need to invest more into the capability of the European Union to defend itself, not just to the east. It's not just about the election, the important election this year in the European Union. In India, there will be elections in many places as well, and also what's been going on in the US and what will be happening in autumn will have a big influence on our way to defend ourselves and what we need to do to defend ourselves. Maybe it won't decide everything, but still, it's a big influence. So we need to do our homework. But before I react to that, I'd like to mention another aspect, because why did we see this strength with Putin? And for so long, we were not able to actually go against what was going on within the Kremlin, because we were dependent on Russian gas, because gas was really used as a weapon against us by Putin, and we should not make this error again, mistake. So this Green Deal to be climate neutral is not just an aspect of climate policy, and it's an important legal aspect in that way, but it's also important for defense and security question, because if if we are still depending on fossil imports, we needed to make the European Union fit with its green transformation. We need the rules, but we also need the investments that will allow for this new setup in the future, because we need a strong industry, as not just an armor industry, but industry as a whole to be independent with affordable, renewable energies, with a functioning infrastructure network where we have maybe solar energy from the south coming to the industrial sites, or maybe also from the coast to the centers of the countries. And that's what we need the European Union for, because this can also only be solved on a European level. And then defense policy. When we're talking about defense and armors and arms as a whole, well, we've been discussing this for quite a while, but in the last years, when it comes to research and development, and also with acquiring the France, there was no benchmark, not a single one that we ever achieved. So no single goal we set ourselves was achieved within that aspect. So especially Paris and Berlin, amongst all the other capitals of the countries, want to have the most sovereignty on a national level, because it needs to be clear that we need to get away from it, because if we want to maintain ourselves, defend ourselves in the world of the 21st century, this will not be the German way, the French way, a Swedish way. It will only happen if we do this on a European scale. Now, light is going off. I don't know if this is a sign for me. But I just wanted to say, your president named renewable energies as freedom energies. And so even if you're from another area, but still we agree on that aspect. So I think we needed to realize that we need to have a European approach here. We need the political will, but we need the reforms as well within the European foreign and defense policy, and we need an end of the unanimity policy, because if for each and every single question we need a yes from Viktor Orban, we will never get there.
Herr Körner, Ihre Partei will ja...
Mr. Körner, your party wants to send a Eurofighter to Europe and Roma in the personal union, with an interesting mix, but maybe a little reminder to the campaign Markus Schulze. Anyway, so when we look at this program, and when we if we had the leading candidate coming here, then would there also be the possibility to go into the commission as the defense commissioner, or under another president, or because we still don't know if Mrs. von der Leyen will be the next president again, and then what will happen after the elections? The leading candidates also don't know exactly. So what's the situation? Maria Stark-Zimmermann is the leading candidate of the European Liberals, so she's the leading candidate, and of course this makes her a candidate, and then we will see. There's one mandate that you didn't get, so we will see what will happen after the elections. But I don't think we should give people the feeling, and that's what the FDP wants, is that it's self-evident that it will be Ursula von der Leyen, because then I don't think they'll take the elections seriously. I'm quite realistic to see what are the chances. So first, I think it's correct what is said about defense policy. We have to organize this on a European level. But we also have to concentrate on everything that we have as duties on the social and environmental level, and also for the military. And for that we need more financing, and for that we need a strong economy. And I think there we need to lay the focus in the next mandate. That's also what the FDP says, but Ms. von der Leyen was the Commission President so far, and we don't know anymore. Is the FDP in favor of Ms. von der Leyen for the Green Deal, the EPP, sorry, or is and who is not sure? Well, I have a suggestion. Just vote for the Freie Liberal. Well, Mr. Schirdewan, you have a special position concerning this topic. There was this threat of the biggest threat of new world war in 70 years, and you said that the West has also a responsibility as well about the situation in Ukraine with this eastern extension of the NATO, but it was sovereign countries that asked to be taken into NATO. So I don't see what. And then you also say you have some understanding for some degree of some degrees of the feeling of security of Russia. I don't see who was threatening them. But anyway, maybe you can say something about that. Yeah, indeed, we need to have a safe environment. Because I heard a lot about investing into defense, into have more arms, that we have to be ready for war in the EU. But I didn't hear about how we position ourselves in the EU in this volatile world in order to make sure that we can live in this international environment on a long term. We have stronger blocks with the EU that get always stronger with the US and China. And they want to. Some people said they want to concentrate on this confrontation after the elections. And of course, I have some preference about who should be the next president. But whoever it will be, they will concentrate on this conflict. And then we should ask the question: what should be the role of the EU here? And then you can say there is transatlantic alliances. That's correct. Well, we can go with NATO in one direction, with the US in one direction, but then we are not capable of solving the real world problems anymore, because we have climate protection we haven't talked about. We have not talked about hunger and the imbalances in the world. So we are living in a world where the situation is getting more and more difficult on an international level, and many analysts see that on an international level, that the situation in Ukraine, and I want to call back to the situation ended 2022. You have this Armageddon speech of Biden against his security advisors, and for a little moment, or at least the CIA thought it was possible that there would be an act within this war. And so an interference in the war. So we have to think about a policy and develop a policy that makes sure that that we put an end to this war as quick as possible, and also the war in Gaza, or also this war has to be ended as quick as possible. And if I want to achieve this, I have to think about how I can do things, because this current strategy with the further escalation, it doesn't work. Russia is maybe about to win the war, but we have to make sure that they take away their soldiers. They have nothing to do in the Ukraine. But if we really want to win the freedom, not win the war, but we want to have freedom, then we have to make sure that we don't continue to escalate the situation, because I think this policy at least has to be extended, so that we also have common diplomatic initiatives, because there's many of them. So having common diplomatic initiatives in order to make sure Russia comes to the negotiation table in order to put an end to this war. So, well, while preparing for this panel here, when I read what the Linke says about the war, with the role, the security of Russia, the role of the USA, then I also see what your party says over the years. So there was motions in the Bundestag, sanctions against Russia, with the reasons for that, but that's not my question. But as I now was able to get to know you personally, what I would like to ask you, because I assume you call yourself a patriot, right? So could you explain to me how the word of patriot can go together with this quite close situation you have with a country like Russia, which sends regularly drones to Germany? Well, if it's really it's drones, then we would have to have a look at individual cases. But if you look at the map, we see that Russia will not disappear and the war will end. I don't think this is wrong. And we have Gerhard Schröder as well, who also had some links to Russia, and he's certainly not in our party. And then also on the left. But in a way, there is one point that is correct. We are in this war, and there is no majority in the U.S. Congress before the U.S. election to participate in another financing, in another in providing more arms. And there is no renowned expert who says that the war as it is led now, that it can be won by the Ukraine. So it is a failure. So we are leading a war where everyday people are dying. And it is clear that Ukraine cannot win this war. And in such a situation, we cannot say, well, we continue anyway. We have to think about how can we put an end to this war, and I do believe that. Well, my son is 21 years old. It's young boys his age that have to go to war. And we gave this boy a lot of love, and it's all went well, but imagine now he would be called to war, and he gets a little bit of training, he gets to the front, and then boom, and everything is gone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something that happens in the Ukraine every day, thousands of times. And I cannot come to the podium to say that we have to produce more grenades so that the war can continue 1 or 2 years and then we will see what happens. No, this war has to end. And this has to end with mediation, And this Turkey has made this proposal several times to act as a mediator. Then maybe we have to listen to them and see this as a possibility, but not say, no, well, Putin is a bad guy and we want to continue this war. We have to continue this war. This is not patriotism. Patriotism doesn't mean that I want to have the sons of the other people killed, and that patriotism also is to be smart and see that it's important now to de-escalate this war and find other solutions. And I will not be ashamed for being in favor of freedom. 100,000 people have already died, and I will not be ashamed to want to protect other people from dying. And I think it's politically wrong what is happening now. So put an end to this dumb, and if we put enough pressure, there will be freedom. Can I add something to this? Well, I would say I could at least from this first round say 2 more things. Well, if you are now fighting against who can talk, then we even lose more time. Maybe still first you, Ms. Barley. But one thing first. So SPD is calling itself the Freedom Party. But at the same time, your politician wants to make the country ready for war. And maybe could you include the word Taurus in your answer, please? Yes, I will do that. So he's the defense minister, and he does a very good job. And indeed, it is the case. So for Mr. Strück, it is the case. So ask the troops, they will tell you exactly that. And making the country ready for war, it doesn't mean that you want to attack it, because it's not like we are choosing to have a war at our doorstep. But there is an easy way to stop the war. It's if Putin takes his troops back, and then it would end. But your question about patriotism, I'd understand it a bit differently, and that's why I would like to say something about it, because something I think about as well. I'm studied law, and I am in favor of the presumption of innocence. But they say that there is money coming from Russia as well. But even if that wasn't the case, then if you defend positions that are kind of almost a copy paste from what could come from Putin and which would weaken the EU, then especially in this area concerning Ukraine and the military, then I think if you look at if the results that the Czech checks found is correct, then it really goes into a risk area here. And then I was in the Samariter Bund as well, and I was in this position in Kiev as well, and I talked with many people there, with many different people, with the mayor, but also at the same time with a group of elderly women who came from their village to Kiev and who have no connections because their children are outside of the Ukraine. And also I met with many Ukrainians in Brussels, and I haven't met one single person from Ukraine who told me, please make sure that there will be negotiations and there will be a truce. So there's really something that touches me, and there was one old woman that told me it's really horrible what is happening to us, and it can be any day that they tell me that my son died. But if we can strong enough to live through that, then you also have to be able to go through that. Because if you say it's terrible that Ukrainians are dying, we have to put an end to it. If we say you have to negotiate with them, then of course, then there will also be people who will fall under this man who has killed or made sure people are killed in a horrible way as well. Somebody who wants to extinguish their culture with all their attacks on museums, on archives. He wants Ukraine to be gone entirely. And if they manage to go through that, to live through that, and if they want to fight, if they withstand, I had a Zoom call with young people, for example, and of course they want something else from their life. And from these people I talked to, from these 4 people, 3 are fighting now. And one of them wanted to be an international lawyer, and she sits there in camouflage in a church and with her laptop, and she says, maybe I will die here at age 24, but I prefer to die rather than to give 1 meter of my country to this brutal dictator. So it's not our place to go there and tell them, no, it's not something you can do. They have the right to defend themselves. Now not putting any arms anymore, and that doesn't giving any arms, that doesn't lead to freedom. They will just be waiting for him to come back in 10 years. So I think it's right to provide arms and weapons. And that brings me to the point. This debate, in one way, I find it very difficult, because your colleague, your party, Moritz, they do it in one way that even in Europe says that, well, Germany has to do this, Germany has to do that. It's also in the different motions. But we deliver weapons for 28 billion euros. The French for 3 billion. Spaniards even less. The Brits maybe 7 billion. I don't know. But we provide most weapons. By large extent, we even have weapons that where it's not even always allowed. So anyway, we had different defense ministers, yes, but now we have Pistorius. Yes, so maybe I can help her a little bit concerning Taurus, because we had this vote in the Bundestag the other day, and there was a vote against Taurus, delivering Taurus tanks. And before that, there was a vote in the parliament 1 week before where they voted in favor of it. Yes, maybe I can repeat that. Indeed, I didn't do that on purpose. I on purpose didn't say that. I find it interesting. I didn't, also on Twitter, I didn't attack it on the same way that you just did it. It wasn't an attack. I just described how things go. I find it incredible because you know how the European Parliament works. The journalists of the Bild newspaper, etc. They don't know how it works, but you do know it. That you just repeat it here, it's incredible. It's unbelievable because we have a resolution, we have a proposal for law, for example, and we have, let's say, 100 amendments, and then you vote on these amendments. And there was one amendment with Taurus, concerning Taurus. And my party, in my political group in the parliament, nobody voted in favor of it. I abstained because there was also other weapon systems there, and nobody voted in favor of. And you know exactly, And then there was the latest, the overall vote. Of course, vote was in it because we were a minority, and of course we voted in favor of this whole package. There was many things in this package, not only that. And now you tell us the SPD is voting against supporting Ukraine. So this is incredible. I was very angry about that, and I don't like to do that, but I find it very unbelievable, and it's incomparable what you are just doing there.
Maybe this is a fight to be had at a later time. It's not just the Bild that was reporting it. Also, Focus Online, Mr. Vipazia talked about the issue, and he gave the exact same arguments as you did. So to have the entire resolution fail just because of one single word, this is not possible. So I have the impression that for now we've been talking too much with you, although maybe we could understand that. But you would like to talk about your Eurofighter. Yeah, indeed. It has been mentioned, but I would like to say two things. First of all, Mr. Krah has a mistake in his ways of thinking, because a couple of minutes ago he said that he doesn't believe, and all the experts say that Ukraine will lose the war. Why should Putin in such a situation start negotiating with the country? Why? That's what should be asked. Everyone calling for peace should be asked this question. So if we think that Russia could win, if we think that's possible, because that's what you said before, there's no expert of rank and name that thinks that this war can be won by Ukraine. Why should Putin even consider negotiating in such a situation? That's a question you need to ask yourself. So we need to bring Ukraine into a situation where Putin needs to be seriously ready to negotiate, and that's what I'm reporting here. So of course, you can try to discredit Magna and so on. For the entire time, she said we need to deliver more, we need to deliver faster, and already during this spring offensive, we should have been delivering the tanks, and this is what Ukraine needs. And if we deliver, then of course, then Russia would wonder whether they would really be able to win the war, and then we will get to a point, and that's where we need to get to at some point, and that's why support for Ukraine is so important. And then let's move a bit further. So what's happening now if we do not support Ukraine enough? What does that mean for us in the end? Will Ukrainians just stay there when Putin's army is just waltzing in? And if there is, and there has been an example what's happened to the civil population, because they all will go running and fleeing to Europe once there is this conquering of the country. And we need to take care of them. We need to house them. It will have enormous consequences for Europe. And also, what will happen to our Eastern European allies who will be next in line? That's the question. So I think it's really, really tiring that we keep talking about peace all also within the SPD, and do you need to freeze the conflicts and what? And Mr. Krah just miming or citing the huge expert Mr. Schröder. This is really a telltale sign of where we're currently at, because Schröder is no longer at the top of German politics. He is just top of the Kremlin. So I would like to justify something. So Eurofighter, this is not something that I would like to say in a pejorative way. This is the FDP that mentioned it themselves. So it's okay. It's okay. You're right. But still, I think that's the way you meant it before, no? With a little hint at something pejorative. So of course, in comparison with the 18%, of course, you can take it to the top and talking about campaigns, but that this lady is really an expert in that question, also against a lot of resistance, has been defending her position, has been threatened with her life every single day, and is still defending this on a European level. And I'm really proud of this and proud of her. And I would like to mention that. So also you can see that within the parliamentary group of the FDP, this is not better. Right. So Mrs. Reintke first, who really asked for the floor. So we said it like that, really short, and then, yeah, no, okay, you have the floor. I'd like to come back to what Moritz just said. We have 2 points that are remarkable here. Peace can be used as an attack on someone who's fighting for a peaceful solution. This is quite fascinating. Also, in a societal, public, political debate, this peace is becoming a swear word. Of course, you can discuss about how to get there, but you need to do this seriously. And if you say the simple way is just Russia retreating, well, then ending the climate change is just ending CO2 emissions. So no, that's just not the solution. Just saying, okay, migrants should just stay there and not move. So we need to think seriously about how we're going to approach this, and just continuing weapon deliveries. What's the end of this logical approach? Because please think about us, what's going to be at the end of this escalation, because there is just this escalation in the end. There's no way to win the war, really not. And here, I think we agree on the point that we need to force Putin to sit down and negotiate about peace. But I do not think that the solution is to deliver more and more weapons. So we need to take BRICS states into consideration, also the Pope and in Africa and everywhere. So everyone is standing for peace, and we're not just no one. And it's not just a matter of this not fitting into the German speeches. So they say the European states do not support this. No. It is a huge mistake that we do not do that, because based on this cooperation, we can have pressure put on Putin. If his allies, for example, the Chinese, say, no, please stop with this shit. Stop it. And then we need to have the economic aspects underlining this. And then he will be forced to sit down and negotiate. Olaf Scholz went to China, and he made them promise not to use any atomic nuclear weapons. It would be nice to have anyone else doing the same. But we're not just talking about nuclear weapons. Maybe Mrs. Reintke. I think we're approaching the end of the evening, and it is quite a full room here. I'd like to keep it short. So honestly, Martin, if you tell us people who are being really on a basis of solidarity with Ukraine that we don't wish for peace, it's really atrocious. So we all wish for peace, but after Bucha has been liberated, shortly after, I was over there and looking at the excess of violence that has happened over there. It's not peace. This is just a reign of violence. This is torture. There was sexualized violence at every single one of these atrocities would be happening again if Ukraine would lose. So of course I would wish for us not needing arms, not needing to discuss the Tories, not having to deliver arms. But I need to recognize that within the Kremlin there is a person that is imperialistic, aggressive, that is all about power, who is not just focusing on Ukraine. And I'm really convinced that this is right. If he is successful in Ukraine, he will move on. And that's a reality we as Europeans need to face. And of course, I would rather discuss about less weapons, because I am part of the Green Party. Because we're the party of peace, but we needed to be able to defend ourselves, not because I adore military and weapons and arms, but because I think I know what's been going on in Ukraine and with the people over there, and we need to fight against this threat of freedom that Putin stands for. So, and it's really a bad thing that I have to say this, and that's why I will continue to fight for solidarity with Ukraine. Just, ladies and gentlemen, a quick look at the time, and as Mrs. Reintke is my co-moderator, apparently tonight, as I correctly said, we're nearing the end. Maybe we started a bit late, but we could finish a bit late as well, maybe then. But I'd like to mention other aspects as well. For example, Green Deal, what's becoming of this, or whether no one will be talking about this by this time, next time, or competitivity, why Germany needs to be the strong country in Europe, but it actually is not in almost any aspect, and also the German vote, as it's called, is a bit dinged up. So all of these subjects cannot be talked about right now, because you, as the public, should get a word in as well. So if you would like to ask a question, and again, I'd like to clarify, question is a question, not a statement. You have the floor. Well, I see someone over there. There will be a mic coming right up to you.
Ja, vielen Dank. Mein Name ist
Thank you very much. My name is Isabel Buske. I'm representing the Federal Association of Consumers, and we unfortunately only had the time to discuss two subjects tonight, but a subject that is keeping households in Europe on their feet is inflation. We are talking about the tractors of the farmers that are blocking the ways here in Brussels, and there's a strong link between those aspects. So 44% of German households said last year that when looking at food, they needed to make sure that they do not spend enough, because inflation was quite high. Also, food prices were quite high. Inflation has gone down. Unfortunately, food prices have not, and the European farmers say the money of the consumers does not get to them. So something happens on the way between the consumers and the farmers. So what do your parties plan to make sure that the money does not get lost somewhere in between in the big companies? Excuse me, I forgot to mention, please keep it short with your questions. So who would like to answer this question? So, Mr. Schirdewan, excellent questions, actually, because since Ursula von der Leyen has been in office, food prices have gone on 30%. Of course, there is no causal link here. It's just a time frame I wanted to create. So maybe there is a link. But of course, we see, and you're completely right, that the big food companies, on the one hand, are in the hands of the financial industry. BlackRock here has the majority of shares, and thereby dictates the pricing policy, and therefore food has become an object of speculation, and it should be forbidden, for example, at the wheat place in Brussels. So it's really atrocious. So we need to think about an additional tax on windfall profits. We have 6 people who are owning food companies. That's something we can attack. Also, there is pricing agreements on the market because the entire market is controlled by only a handful of companies. In Germany, there are 4 companies. So we have 4 commercial companies that control the most of the agricultural products and food products, and we need to make sure that smaller companies also have a say, that also smaller chains have a possibility to act, and we need to make sure that also farmers can make a living out of their business, that everything can be paid for, that we have fair prices that are not below the producing prices. So it's not that we need a limit as in other countries for in Croatia. So for example, is the additional tax, or in France as well. Please may I remind you that we're trying to get to the end of this, but it's an excellent question because it's about the living conditions of people and how we can improve them. And in France, that we have this group of people where you have the consumers, where you have the producers all coming together trying to lower the prices, and this is maybe something that we could attack so that we can get to a kind of a maximal threshold. Of course, I cannot start another discussion. Also, I'm really sorry for you, Mrs. Barley. Also, Mrs. Reintke needs to leave us on the spot right now. Is there one last question to Mrs. Reintke that she can quickly answer before she needs to leave? If not, it's also fine. She's just said so. I think everyone would like to add something. I would also like to add something. So, any other questions, maybe online questions that would have to be taken into consideration? Okay, I see 3, 4 raised hands. Let's just say those 3 questions. So we have the left wing. Well, let's just say the left part of the public. So we have 1 raised hand over here. Maybe we could get a mic to this person over there. Hi, my name is Lasse Merz. I would have a question to Mr. Caspary. So how important is the green part of the industrial deal to you? And then also, I try to avoid this green deal, but also I'd like to hear the others. So goals are quite clear. We would like to be neutral by 2050, but we would like to be an industrial country and not an industrial museum. So we need to make sure that this is also profitable. Between 1990 and 21, we managed to increase the economic performance by the factor of 2. So we need to do it again. So 2 minutes. So maybe 2 questions can be squeezed in. There were other hands that were raised. So of course, there was one question here. Florian Wagner of the University of Kassel. My question is the following: to no one in person, but also to all, but rather to all of you. So I will answer then, says the moderator. So it's about connecting people. So policy should not be done in the ivory tower somewhere up there, but people should be able to participate. Is there a possibility to have a direct democracy based on participation? And of course, we have the possibility to vote, but many other people do not have that. For me, it's quite important. I'm not just an MEP. I'm also a citizen, and I think that the subject of a participation here can be quite a motto. And we had this example where we had citizens that were included, and we would like to confirm that we have a citizens council where people talk about important political questions. And we had this meeting, future of the European Union. We did exactly that. The question is, what do we make out of it? There were suggestions, and the European Parliament said we need this we need the recommendations of the citizens. We want to include them, and we want to make them a reality, because I don't want to have just a place where people keep on talking forever and forever. It needs to have an actual influence on policy. So we need to go a step further, not just discussing, but rather implementing this into concrete political steps. I do not want Mr. Körner to leave dissatisfied. So a lot of what Terry just said is correct, but there is a great system of this kind of democracy. It's the parties, because we should not forget about the value of our parties. Please become a member of a party. Everyone can participate, everyone can contribute, because anywhere here on the spectrum you can find a place. We see that up on our podium here. This is an important, really important point, because party policy can only work if people actually participate. So, what should I say? This was an excellent final word. You can say that it's a right subject. We get to a positive feedback here, running up to the election. So, thank you very much for this interesting and fair discussion. I hope you found my moderation also fair. I wasn't against any of you before. I'm still not against any of you. So, well, okay. Mrs. Reintke needs to leave, and now the sound has cut off. Apologies from the interpreters. Apologies from the interpreters. We unfortunately cannot hear what's being said in the room. The sound has been cut off. Still no sound. Our apologies.
Wenn wir darüber d'accord sind, dann ist
the sound is back. So if we agree, then the vote of each single citizen is the highest good of the democratic state, of a democratic state. It's the good of the European Union. The EUD, as a pro-European association, wants to support the elections. It's the highest discipline where citizens can participate in shaping Europe. A free society lives from exchanging ideas, but also from having disputes. Because it is about talking together and exchanging, even if you are disputing. So now we have had this format here, which is not the first time we organize. 4 years ago as well, we had a very good event with many participants, and together with the leading candidate. And I think the panel today shows that we are on the right way, and I am sure that all the parties have given everything to make this event a success. We want to thank the representation of Hess for the organization and preparation of this event. I thank Hans-Jürgen Moritz, my friend and colleague, for this professional moderation. And I think this very engaged exchange today shows that this election is very important for seeing where Europe will go. Only a strong Europe that is able to act will be able to react to the demands and needs of the European Union citizens. And if you have some other remarks, you can always come to me. As you see, I also come to the important things of life, meaning that we are coming closer to the reception where we can drink and eat. As you know, these receptions are also always very pleasant, and I now only want to wish you a very pleasant evening. Thank you.